Hi, I'm Yaffi Lvova, registered dietitian, nutritionist, and owner of Baby Bloom Nutrition and Naptime Nutrition. Welcome to Naptime Nutrition. Today I have with me Allison Lansman, who is coming to talk to us about gardening and how it's important for kids and practical tips of how we can start. So thank you so much, Allie, for joining me.
Absolutely happy to be here.
We have a slight delay in the with the technology, so everyone just bear with us. But so I picked up Allie, so we're at in the RD Lounge, which is a virtual place where RDs write for other RDs, dietitian to dietitian, and she wrote a great article about gardening with kids. It's something that I'm passionate about. Unfortunately, my thumbs don't necessarily agree with my philosophies, and I just kill everything. So I wanted to bring on an expert to come talk to you about it. And Allie is in Iowa and has a background in a lot of community gardening and farming. So let's just get right to it. What is the benefit of starting a garden with your kids?
Yeah, there are so many benefits to starting a garden with your kids. We can always talk about, especially the dietitian nutrition background. It really introduces kids to fruits and veggies, ones that they're familiar with, ones that they're not familiar with, but really helps them build a relationship with those foods. It helps them build a relationship with adults, you as well, when you're in the garden. And it also helps stimulate positive conversations about food, about the environment, about culture, about body relationships, social interaction. So there are so many ways that being in a garden can benefit children. I'm speaking from personal experience, both for me as I grew up gardening with my family, with my mother, with my grandmother, with other family members, as well as working with children in gardens extensively for the past 3 years.
That's amazing. So, and I try to get the same ideas across by cooking. And as we were chatting about before we started, a lot of people are now familiar with division of responsibility and other methods of responsive feeding. And that's definitely something that we encourage, but it's also a limited perspective on how we can encourage a healthy relationship between parents and children, between kids and their food and kids and their bodies. And so we're both taking that angle that you can take that conversation into the garden, into the supermarket, into the kitchen. And these are ways that you can expose kids to different foods. And some people are familiar with the research that says that kids need between 15 and 40 exposures to see a food as safe. Mm-hmm. And it just depends which study you're looking at, but it's generally agreed upon that kids really like to eat things that are familiar. And there's a biological basis to that. Once they start walking, they could theoretically wander out of the cave and put something poisonous in their mouth. So they get to this food neophobia where they're afraid of foods that are unfamiliar. So there's a biological basis to that. It is not a behavioral thing that's going on, which a lot of parents, they do think that it's that. So I like to provide that biological basis. But when we offer the same foods over and over again in different ways, including in coloring, including in gardening and cooking, and having a conversation at the grocery store, like which pepper should I buy? Are we into red peppers or yellow peppers today? These are all ways to provide valuable exposure. And so I love that you brought up the parent bond as well, because it's time that parent and child can be together enjoying an activity together. And even if nothing ends up growing, you still had that experience. And it's so beautiful.
Yes, it absolutely is. It's very true.
So the thing is that gardening really uses a child's natural curiosity to increase their interest. And that's the whole point of this. It's when you're interacting in the garden, there's no pressure to take a bite because you're doing something related to food that isn't eating. And even if you've got the perfect table dynamic, sometimes just the fact that you're sitting at the table with a plate in front of you can be intimidating on its own for hesitant kids who are more cautious around food. Yeah. So
yeah, so that is absolutely true.
Yeah. So what do you recommend starting off with? I mean, that's the big thing. Everyone thinks this is a great idea. I don't know anyone who thinks gardening is a terrible idea, but how do you start?
That's a really big question. Obviously, like you said, especially if gardening is not in your background, but it's something that you want to provide to your own children. So I always say if gardening is intimidating to you, which it definitely can be, um, even though the more you're introduced to it, the more easy it seems. I was raised with a background of definite, like tons and tons of gardeners. Gardening was not intimidating. We had huge gardens. But my recommendation is the smaller, the better. So start small, small, small. And that usually includes small container gardens in your kitchen, count the sill in your window. That's perfect. Like grow something tiny, like an herb, like whatever your favorite herb is. Grow like a little tiny basil plant that you found at the grocery store, and build that connection with your little one. Then work your way up to seeds. You can start seeds with your little one. One of the things that I really enjoy, especially being a huge plant person, is whether it is a house plant or something that you can eat. Um, Grow something in your child's windowsill in their room, something that they build like a really beautiful bond with, that they can see all the time. I mean, how cute would it be to have just a little tomato plant growing in their windowsill that they can eat the little cherry tomatoes off of, whenever they want? Because cherry tomatoes can be tiny, they can be big, but allow the garden to take over your space. That's just like my motto. And I'm talking to parents or community members, teachers that I have worked with in the past that are intimidated by gardens. Um, I always say Pinterest is your best friend. There are lots of individuals who dedicate their life to gardening, and helping you be able to garden in a way that isn't intimidating. And also dedicating to gardening with kids. So there's lots and lots of information out there. I always really suggest, especially if you have, it's great for any age, but if you have little teeny tinies at home, I love, love, love sensory gardens. And what is sensory? So there are plenty of ways that you can incorporate foods, vegetables, herbs are excellent for a sensory garden. But it's ways that something that feels different, things that look different, things that smell different, so they can start incorporating all of their senses into the gardening process. So I would always love to do different time, a little teeny tiny leaf plant. Or potatoes are really great. Then kids get to dig in the dirt, and feel that. And then sunflowers, things that grow really tall and are really colorful. So all of those are different examples, and great for young to old, have enough space for a really, really large garden. The window seal is like a perfect way to start, and just get incorporated into it and realize that gardening is a fun thing. It isn't a scary thing. And also, not everything has to grow. Like you said, even if you don't get a product out of it, you still get the experience, which is the most important part.
Those are some really great practical tips. I love having the plant in your child's room. And of course, when we're talking about cherry tomatoes, those are still choking hazards for 4 and under. So if we're doing that, you're not going to do that with a child who's that age. But a child who's 6, 7 years old having a tomato plant on their windowsill, that's fantastic. And I love how you mentioned digging in the dirt for potatoes, because I read a study a while ago about how the microbiota in the soil, there are actually microbes that interact with you and interact with your biology, and the effect is an antidepressant effect that rivals some of the pharmaceuticals on the market. And so not only are you spending time outside synthesizing vitamin D, getting that nature exposure, which is so great for anxiety management, but you're interacting with these microbes in the soil that help with your mood as well. And I thought that was fascinating.
Yes,
So lots of
absolutely. And yeah, the more the experience that you get out in the garden, like you definitely feel um much happier, and you notice that kiddos like absolutely love it as a place to go relax, have physical activity. You just definitely like see a happiness. Like I feel like it's universal. I see it for most kids that I see out in the garden. They love their time out there.
That's fun. That's really fun. And you brought up another point earlier about exposing kids to the idea of different bodies. And this can be a great springboard for conversations on diversity, not only body size diversity, but color and ethnicity, because different plants need different amounts of sunlight and different type of nutrition, and they grow different, and they're different colors and different sizes and different flavors. And you can use all of that to talk about how people are also different, and people also come in different packages. And my good friend and colleague Danny Leibovitz came out with a resource recently on using specific fruits and vegetables to have those conversations. So especially in today's climate where we're really making an effort to teach our kids to be open and to understand that there are differences, and we can still enjoy the flavor of different shaped peppers, and we can still enjoy the personalities and backgrounds of different types of people. Um, it's such a valuable conversation to have, and using a garden to have that conversation is a very gentle and understandable way to get that information across. Oh, I think you're frozen. Oh no. Okay, I'm waiting for you to unfreeze. Oh no. Okay, I'm trying to restart this. Oh, there you are.
I apologize.
Technology, it happened.
Okay, all right, I apologize.
No, it's technology, whatever. So, oh, so that's how, so we can start with windowsill stuff. And you mentioned getting a store-bought basil plant, and I have a little bit of a funny story. Some of those basil plants say not for planting, and I thought, well, that's just ridiculous. So I planted mine anyway, and it's thriving. It's been about 6 months, maybe. I mean, it's 2020. Maybe it's been 2 years at this point. I don't know. It's not getting bigger, but it's healthy. Um,
Yeah.
so it's just something to be on the lookout for. I probably wouldn't buy another one that says not meant for planting, because it seems like it's bred a certain way to not grow specifically. But basil is super easy in a lot of climates, and it really thrives, and it's fun, especially with herbs, because they grow so quickly, and you really get that closer to immediate gratification when you see something grow like that, as opposed to an apple tree, for example, which takes, some years to root. Yeah, yeah. And then growing an herb garden will help kids to incorporate that stuff into their food, because they grew it, they want to use it. We actually have a live comment. Let's see. Susie says, a fun way to watch them grow indoor or outdoor without a lot of space is a tower garden. I've seen those. Have you seen
Yes.
those? Yeah.
Yes. Because I've had a lot of outdoor space, I have moved to an apartment, and I'm looking for more ways to incorporate those. But tower gardens are fantastic. I've seen lots of people like incorporating hydroponics at their home, which is fantastic and so fascinating. You can also take, I know lots of people just use like an old drum that's been like super cleaned in some ways. Some people use like old 5-gallon buckets, incorporate those. I know, there's lots and lots of fancy things out there that you can use, but there's also lots and lots of cheap ways to do a successful garden. And honestly, like, your kids, they're not in anything fancy. They are interested in the activity and doing it with you. So there's plenty of DIYs out there that they can use. I think that's fantastic. So I'm glad that was brought up.
Yeah, yeah, I've seen the Tower Garden. I went to a presentation once on the Tower Garden, and some of the information was kind of weird, but the concept is great. I was told in the presentation that organic is defined by the soil, and since the Tower Garden has no soil, then it's automatically organic. And I think that's a very narrow way to view it, and I would say that that's inaccurate, because that's not what organic means. But if you don't have space to have a garden and you want to grow crops in an efficient way and involve your kids, that's a fantastic resource. And they also do school programs. So if a school doesn't have space for a garden, they can participate in these programs with Juice Plus. And I am not sponsored by Juice Plus. I can't speak for most of their products. We're speaking only about the Tower Gardens with this. But yeah, those are very interesting, and the crops grow very quickly.
Yes, they do. And I think that's a lot better. Like we were talking about things growing fast, especially the younger little kiddos want to see something super quick, like come back to their seat and expecting a full bee plant the other day. It's great learning about, like time spans and schedules. So I agree. The more uh, science forward things that they're able to put into school, I think is really helpful with incorporating things quickly and getting more satisfaction for the little ones. That's why it's great to incorporate lots of different things, teaching about technology as well in agriculture and gardening.
Yeah, I think that's such a great point. Okay, so if a parent were to say, I want to start a garden today, this afternoon, what would be the first thing that would be a great starter plant?
Great starter plants. I think to start with, I think you're definitely, you can go out and get yourself some seeds. But if you want to go out and get yourself a plant start, so the little tiny baby plants, little seedlings that have already been started for you, I would always recommend an herb. Like an herb goes really great. It's a great learning tool. Teaching your kids about different flavors that you can add into your foods. You can also, somehow incorporate, if your kiddos are old enough, tasting the leaf, and learning how one little tiny leaf can incorporate so much flavor. I also suggest, if you do have room, if you have a yard, incorporating, kind of a fruit tree. I know we were talking about how that takes a lot of time, but that's something that when they're little, as they grow, it can grow with them and they understand like the fruit tree process, which is really, really cool. I also really love, depending on where you are located, like carrots are always really fun, potatoes, something that grows underground. And also, it always depends on your climate. So snap peas are a really, really good one. They produce really quickly. They're really sweet. The kiddos love that. So there's lots of different options. It's always looking at what your kid loves the most to get them integrated into something and then expanding as you go to new and different things.
That's a really interesting point. Starting with something that they're familiar with. And that makes sense. I heard a story. This woman told me once that her kids got so into gardening. She was making a recipe and it called for green onions, but green onions weren't in the garden and she knew her kids would be disappointed. So she went and bought green onions and just threw them under a bush and sent her kids out to find them.
That's so cute. I know those green onions, you bring those up, those are an excellent starter. Like they grow super fast, they're delicious. You can incorporate them into anything. But no, that is super cute.
Yeah, it's wonderful. And just to really drive home the point, we're talking about the bonding activity and the process of growing and the conversations you can have around food. This does not guarantee that your child is going to take a bite, but that's not the point. The point is creating happy conversation and happy attitudes and happy atmosphere around food. And that's what gardening does in a very efficient and fun way that has immediate benefits as well as long-term benefits. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely, definitely do.
So if you're here in Arizona, where I am, and it was only 104 degrees yesterday, so It's interesting because it feels like it's not a good time to plant things, but if you follow on Instagram, Tony Grows Food, he's a gardener in this area, and he's saying that now is the time to start thinking about planting for fall. So even though it's hot out, anyway, if you want to find out more about that, follow Tony Grows Food and look around for other gardening content to follow. But it's a really fantastic idea to just brighten up your life while involving your kids in something super practical and a skill that's really going to last them. Yeah.
Absolutely. I always love to say, if you're looking for great resources, I know I dropped Pinterest, of course, we always love Pinterest, but also your local extension, the agriculture, horticulture division, they really help you when you're concerned about what to plant when. They're very helpful. They have lots of guides on different fruits and vegetables, but then I always love to support local farmers, local bloggers that focus on gardening. They usually have lots and lots of tips, and then you're supporting a local professional as well. They really know a lot about what they're doing. So if you're ever concerned or nervous about that, realize that you do have a lot of resources to go to help you learn. And that's what they're there for. So it's great to take advantage of them.
Right, that's a great tip. And the truth is that you can also look in places that you might not have thought. For example, here, the local libraries do seed swaps. And right now, it's just, go and pick it up just because we're not interacting in person right now. But in general, that would be a great way to have access to people who have been growing and can answer questions about your climate, about what's going on in your location and how to make the best of your garden.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay, well, I think this was really great. Thank you so much, Allie, for joining me. And you, and most of your work, as we talked about before coming on live, is with the community, and you do gardening with your community, and your professional life is more freelance writing. So you're at freelancerd.com.
Yes.
And so people can find you there. But if you live in Iowa, everyone should
Yes.
look you up.
Or Midwesterners want to contact me, even if you live, across the country, having a relatable RD that loves to plant. I love to learn about new climates. Who knows, I may move to your corner someday and have to rely on you to learn some gardening tips outdoors. So definitely, I absolutely love it. Love to be involved in the community with gardening, with teaching kids about nutrition. I do some culinary stuff as well with my kiddos. Bringing it from seed to table is one of my favorite things. So no one feel afraid to reach out to me. I love to talk to other individuals that also love gardening and nutrition. So definitely looking forward to some contacts. If you'd ever like to, always feel free to reach out.
Great, and I'll post your social media stuff. All right. Thank you so much for joining me for this nap time nutrition. It was great. I've been wanting to do this topic for a long time. All right. I'll see. Thank you for viewing. Thank you for listening. And I will see you next time on Nap Time Nutrition.